Hey Serge, this is officially week 7 of our shelter in place orders. And coincidentally, we are talking about the choice that we have to follow God, even in the midst of a storm in our lives. So let's just get right to it. Last week, Governor Pritzker announced that he was extending our shelter in place orders until May 30th, with some modifications to the executive order. Unfortunately, those modifications don't include the ability to convene for prom or graduation ceremonies or even for youth group. And I think we all knew that was coming, but even so, it kind of sucks. And if you're like me, you're starting to feel this whole social isolation thing. I mean, at first, I think I was just really concerned with trying to make everything work. How's it going to look, and how do we do online programming and squeeze everything into the time that we have? And I didn't even let myself realize that all of this meant that I wouldn't get to see my favorite people as much as I did. I was just in go mode, and I was trying to problem solve. And I think that may have delayed a little bit the grief that comes along with this sort of thing. But now, officially, after 7 weeks of this, I do feel it. I know most of you have felt this anxiousness and the grief of what we're missing out on from the beginning. But tonight, I just want you to know that I am in that place with you. This hurts. It's not fun. I know it's necessary, and I know that doing this and staying home will and has saved lives. It's our duty and our responsibility right now to God's people and this kingdom, but despite that, it still sucks. And I really believe that it's okay for us to feel that. And conveniently, that feeling really goes along with what we've been talking about for the last few weeks. You know, we all have a choice. And once again, I'll remind you that that choice is called autonomy, right? It's the ability to choose how you think, feel, act, and believe, especially when it comes to following God. And you know, right now, we do still have a choice. We can either bow down to the grief and feel it and live it and mourn in the midst of it and then use it for the glory of God, or we can let it defeat us. We can sink in it deep down into that dark place that we all know and where we've all been before, where the world and circumstances beyond our control defeat us. But I want you to notice something about what I just said. In neither option did I say that we shouldn't grieve or we shouldn't throw a heavenly fit at all we've lost. It's okay to do just that. In fact, I think it's necessary, a necessary step in the process, and that eventually will help us to feel human again. So feel those feels. Get right down in there in that place that hurts and cry and scream and shake your fist at the injustice of it all, because you deserve to. You've lost a lot in all of this, and that's okay. But tonight, like we have for the last few weeks, we'll be hearing from a special friend to Serge about a time when she too lost something so unimaginable that there were moments when it took her breath away. And in the midst of that storm, she found a way to bring praise to God. So here's Jen Schotlin to give you a testimony about one of the hardest times of her life.
Hi, Serges. This is Jen Shotland. I was going to give you a little testimonial about a time that I chose to follow God, even though my circumstance was difficult. As some of you know, my sister, Tricia, passed away about 6 years ago. Here's a picture of her and her family. She had ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. It was about a 4-year battle of her losing control of her muscles, from her arms to her legs to her hands to her mouth to her smile to her ability to eat to her ability to breathe on her own. She was on a ventilator. She could move her eyeballs, and that was it. That's how she communicated. She lived in a nursing home for the last year and a half of her life. It was horribly tragic in some ways, but in many, many ways, it was a beautiful, wonderful display of God's miracles. I don't know why he chose not to heal her, but he did everything else possible, like in ways I can't even imagine. And it's hard to describe just all the different things, and from the timing of certain things to the way that people came up around and surrounded her family and her, and myself, the changes I saw in her. She was, she was my big sister. We weren't that close actually before she got sick. We were starting to, but to get closer, I just had my kids, and we're just starting to get along better. But she was not in a great place in her life when she got sick. She was starting to go to marriage counseling. She was going out quite a bit, and just she was in a great place. And this illness, luckily, instead of letting it devastate her, she let it mold her into this amazing, graceful, grace-filled person that many people got to know and admire her because of her illness. She was in the newspaper, she was on the news in Champaign, she's a little celebrity because of her illness and because of how wonderful of a person it made her be. Anyway, so Praise You in the Storm, I think, is us acknowledging that God is so much bigger than any circumstance that we're in, that we know that God is going to get us through it and get us through it in amazing, spectacular ways that we can't even imagine. Give us that peace that passes all understanding, and just do great and beautiful things. We can let the bad things in our life tear us down and drag us into a pit of despair, or we can praise God and learn things and experience, it can be such an opportunity for growth as a person. And part of that is in praising God and choosing to continue to follow God through those bad things.
Okay, we want to say a huge thank you to Jen for going to that place with us tonight, for sharing a time in life when everything really didn't feel fair, when she faced loss that was unimaginable, but then brought herself back to the foot of the cross as she went through it. So thank you, Jen. Thank you for being a part of our family and for sharing that with us tonight. And I know you are all dealing with situations and complicated emotions and things that don't make a whole lot of sense right now. And those things and those situations, they're very specific to you. Not all of us can understand what your unique situation holds, but we can love you in the midst of it, and we can stand with you as you wrestle with it. But there is something that we all uniquely share in this complicated situation. And it's that all of us, every single one of us, is dealing with loss. We've lost time, valuable time that we thought we would have with our friends and our family, people we love because we're holed up in our houses. We've lost occasions to celebrate, at least not in the ways that we thought we would. Weddings and birthdays and milestones at school, like the last day of 8th grade or your last day of high school. And we've lost what we thought our lives would be like in the next 6 months. The ideas we had conjured up in our heads, our hopes for fellowship, summer trips, youth group, vacations, choir tour, just time together. And now, it's not to say that we aren't finding ways to celebrate or finding ways to be together in the middle of all of this, because we are. We have Surge Online like we are right now, and all over the country, school districts are getting creative and celebrating proms and graduations and scholarship banquets. And I don't want to shed negative light on that. It's a beautiful truth about people all over our world. We're called to rise, and so many people are doing just that. But I don't think you'll disagree that at the end of the day, we all know it's just not the same. It's different than what we thought it would be. Something's just missing. We're facing loss. And loss isn't fair. Loss is messy. Loss can turn us into a version of ourselves that we aren't really familiar with, because there are no rules when facing grief and when dealing with loss. It's different for everyone. In the Bible, we have an example of a man who lost quite literally everything. We often talk about Job when we talk about trials and loss in the church. So I'm sure, once again, you've heard this story before, but tonight we're going to hit the highlights. Job, first I want you to note that Job was a man with integrity. He had this amazing life. We hear in verses 2 and 3 in the book of Job that He had 7 sons, 3 daughters, 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and a large number of servants. And even present day, even in 2020, that is a pretty impressive haul. He has quite the life that he has built for himself. He is a dude that had it all, especially when we think about it historically, like we just did. He's considered blameless and upright, meaning that God sees him as a good man. And he's even described as the greatest man in all of the East. And then one day he loses it all. He loses his oxen and his sheep and his servants and his camels, eventually even his kids, his sons and daughters. So think of it this way. One moment, Job is going along, living this beautiful life full of the people that mattered most to him, tending to his land and his animals, feasting regularly with his family. And then the next moment, every bit of it is gone. Tragedy strikes. And suddenly, he goes from being a man with it all, with hopes and dreams and ambitions and plans for the future, to being a man standing in the middle of a deep, catastrophic wreckage of what his life used to be. And he doesn't know where to go next. And then, after losing seemingly everything, then he gets sick. He gets these painful sores all over his body. And then once again, he's lost something else important to him, his health. And then in Job, chapter 3, he has this fit of grief. We might expect it, right? You and I, we might go on a Snapchat rant and send it to all of our friends. But in the Bible, he goes on this lengthy, 10 or 20 chapter conversation with all these different people and these prayers. And it's really flowery. He's got a lot of beautiful language in it. I don't blame the guy, right? I mean, his life is really in shambles. So I feel like, speak your piece, bud. I mean, you deserve to. And Job, feeling defeated and depleted and hopeless, he talks to these people. And he has these long-winded conversations about how it's not really fair. And then, quite literally, in the midst of an actual storm, God speaks to him and reminds him that he's been carrying him all along. Through all of it. All the pain, all the trial, all the things that he hasn't been able to understand. Those hard, awful realities that he's faced. He's always been there. God has always been there for him. And I hope, Serge, that tonight you hear this about Job's story. That, first of all, Job was a good man. He tried hard to honor God. He built a life that he was proud of. And still, despite being a good man, some pretty horrible things happened to him. And 2, that even though he was a good man who bad things happened to, God still loved him beyond measure. And God still held him and walked with him. And it was Job's choice through all of it, whether to curse at God for the circumstances he'd been dealt, or to let himself be carried and try to find a way to work the problem. So let me say this. I know that you, all of you people in Surge, the people that you are, wherever you're watching from tonight, I know that you're good. You were made to be God's holy, heavenly, and beloved children. There's nothing wrong with the people that you are, and you are so worthy of his love. And you, God's children, as much as we would all love to shield you from the messiness and the grief of the world, we just can't. You are good people. And the unfortunate reality is that bad things will happen to you sometimes. You will deal with loss like you are right now. You will deal with hurt. You will deal with disappointment. And there will undoubtedly be days and times in life for you when the unthinkable and the unexplainable happen. And you'll be faced with a choice on where to go next. And if you are someone who feels like that is unfair, you are so right. It absolutely is. But I want to remind you of something. When those hurtful and unexplainable things happen and you don't know where to go next, you do still have a choice. And you'll always have that choice no matter what. You can choose to let the grief consume you and to stay in that dark place forever and let it harden you and your spirit, or you can rise. And you can search somewhat desperately for the glimmer of hope in the middle of the storm and make something beautiful out of it. I hope you do rise, Surge. And to be honest, I know that you will. I know you all. And I know that you are good, strong people who will rise. And at first, you have to cry and grieve and scream and fight it, then I'm here to do that with you. But like Job, and like Jen, and like all those examples we have of people who have faced this loss and this unimaginable tragedy, we have to remember that we are still given a choice. I love you all more than you're ever going to know, and I'm in this with you. And I'll see you soon tonight in small groups. Bye.